It's a very busy day here for the fire service. They've been called out not because there's a fire outbreak. It is because today is National Sanitation. There's a drive towards making Accra the cleanest city in Africa. They've called out Zoom Lion workers and others, but the interesting part is the fire service coming in, and officials here want the fire service to use water from the tenders to flush out human excreta along the drains. There's a serious challenge with open defecation here, and the residents here are very unhappy about it. Nobody's owning up to it, but some people are responsible.
The baller, the toilet, egu. Oko kan no mu yentoka. Tumi bisa ha na oda, na ho yo papa dia.
People dump refuse here, others defecate inside the drain. They are quick to tell you off when you ask them to stop. It's a good move to clean the drain, but this effort will be wasted if we don't put an end to this terrible habit. If culprits are arrested and prosecuted, others wouldn't dare to misbehave.
Year after year after year, we advocate to have the drains done because the drains are so bad that when it rains, the water comes into our houses. It comes with all the filth from uptown. From uptown, it comes from everywhere. Mamobi, Nima, wherever. You see everything being put into this drain. Early in the morning when you wake up, you see about 100 people squatting and defecating in this gutter. This is not Ghana. When I was growing up, I didn't see this. In the 60s, when I came to Ghana, I didn't see this. I see that they're trying to dredge the gutter, and they got a fire service engine, which is pumping water into the ground in the area of the gutter. Exactly what is that going to do for Ghana? You bring in a water engine to spray water into a massive drain like this. Is that not a waste of time, energy, and money? Fire service is supposed to be saving people whose lives are in danger in their houses and in places. They brought them in here to spray water into the gutter. Look at that. No, it's not wastewater. We're talking about they're wasting the water.
You find long queues of people defecating inside the drain between 7 and 8 p.m. every day. We have made several efforts to stop them, but they continue this terrible act with impunity.
So the general conversation about sanitation and how well as a country we're doing or should be doing is always not on the back burner, but always on the main discussion platforms. And last Saturday epitomized what the issue should have been, because prior to that time we'd always been having the conversation about whether we have the capacity, etc. And continuously we tend to institute some of those days to make sure that we rid the country of the filth that we say have engulfed our cities, our major towns, and our communities. And rightly so. Well, we had the Minister for Sanitation, Kofi Ada, spearheading that in collaboration with Zoom Lion, the AMA, and other waste management companies, as well as various community groups and NGOs. And rightly also, we have the Minister in the studio, Mr. Joseph Kofi Ada, is the Minister of Sanitation. Good morning to you, sir. Good morning. We're privileged to have you in the studio.
It's my pleasure.
Great, especially with the tremendous work and hard work that you put up over the weekend. We know that, well, you had to make it a time to be here. All right, and we also have somebody who is heading an NGO that is making great strides, making sure that we change the behavioral patterns of not only the ordinary Ghanaian, but also the various interest groups in our country. And Kojo Lumo is the Executive Director for World Code Green, and is an NGO that focuses on sanitation in areas, especially in public safety areas. Good morning to you, Kojo.
Good morning, Mr. Roland.
All right, but let me start with you, sir. Generally, what are the basic statistics? Because we in the media tend to learn that we have problems with details and numbers. How much waste do we generate generally, especially in Accra and the other cities as a country?
Nationally, we're talking about, on the low side, about 15,000 metric tons a day. On the average side, perhaps about 20,000 metric tons a day. That's what we have on the book so far as generated nationwide. Indeed, because there was no sanitation ministry I don't think we kept accurate statistics on that. So these are simply projections or secondary data that we're gathering from different sources. But as we strengthen our institutional capacity in the ministry, I'm sure we have more accurate data in the future.
So generally also we'll ask, then how filthy is Ghana when we have to talk about it, just beyond the tonnages?
Well, what I can say is that Ghana is filthier than it's been when I was a child growing up. That's all because the attitudes have not been consistent in terms of discipline, in terms of enforcement, compelling us to do the right things. And also globally, if you compare Ghana with what has been presented to other countries, they present us as if we are the 7th dirtiest country in the world, which of course, I cannot have issues with that, even though I'd love to, simply because we do not have accurate data to tell where our position should be. But certainly, it's not a good thing to talk about in terms of 7th dirtiest nation in the world, if that's how they're projecting us to be.
Well, what have accounted for it then, that we've come to the state in which we now think is realizable that we're in this filthy state?
I think it's simply a fall in the discipline of Ghanaians. We've not remained disciplined and focused in terms of sanitation. Partly also because we've not had the right structures and organizational setup to address this matter. It could also be argued that some resources, financial resources, have not been made available to them in a sustainable and consistent manner for us to be able to undertake the exercises required. I say that because when we were kids growing up, the enforcement was really very stiff, and it was visible. You could see the sama, the tankas we call them, all over the place. And it was common to find a young man like me or a kid like me running to my mommy, telling my mommy that the people are down the street, do something about that. That has fallen through. Today, as we speak, most Ghanaians really want to clean up Ghana. They're all anxious to be part of the process because they don't accept what it is. But it must start from each of us, that we change our attitudes, change our mindsets, and that's why we've chosen to bring up the mantra that we should play our part. And we say, let's clean Ghana, play your part. And as we all begin to change our attitudes from an individual point of view, rolling out to the community level and nationwide, I'm sure we can transform this nation, as envisioned by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
Well, it's good, Mr. Kujolomo, that the minister mentioned perhaps the change in attitudes, etc. That also, if you look at the cursory observation, would be something that civil society has been talking about. And your NGO really also just falls in line with all that. Exactly. Is it that bad, that our attitudes are so bad that if you take an aggregation of how poor it is, we have come to the state in which we are?
Yes. Let me say this. The whole issue that we have now, you could trace it down the line to the point where we decide to define democracy in our own way. We are defining democracy in a way that we can do anything that we want. But under normal instance, you see, the issue has to do with, humans naturally would always do things when they are compelled to do. When you leave humans to act, they wouldn't, unless there's a force behind what they have to do. So before, like he made mention of, we have inspectors coming to your homes to even inspect your barrels, that whether you have any dirt in it. But now we don't have that anymore. So I think that if we are to strengthen the states to act, this whole issue of filth wouldn't be anywhere near us. So we've left humans to act in the way they want, and so that's how come we are what we are seeing now. Mr. Ada, is it as easy as we seem to think it? Because we in the media seem to oversimplify the issues, but you are the ministry. You look at the bigger picture. How big is it for which that perhaps we in the media and the general civil society need to have a basic understanding and to put things right before we say that, well, it's easy, it's just collecting waste and all?
The President himself mentioned in his State of the Nation address that perhaps one of his most ambitious goals for his administration is the sanitation bit. And that in itself tells you that it's a big problem, it's a deep-seated problem, it's a problem that really it will take some time for us to address in a systematic manner, and that's the way we want to approach it. It's not a matter of you and I just getting out there and sweeping the streets and putting the refuse in the dustbin and leaving it there. We have to look at the entire value chain, from the generation of the waste, you and I polluting, to the sweeping, the collection, and the transportation, all the way to the final disposal site. That whole range of the value chain is involving. There are many different things in each of those stages. And if you begin to drill deep into that, you'll find that the human factor has a very important part to play in there. Right. And that from the outset, if we begin to do things right, I'm sure we can really make a big difference. And the reason why I mentioned that is that if you look at an example such as what we refer to as the liquid waste, which is basically fecal matter, where we saw on the clip the fire service having to flush out human waste, excreta, along the big gutter around the Paloma area. Simply, it tells us that in the houses around the area or within the community, there are no places for them to ease themselves, and that's why we've got a problem. And if you trace it deeper, and that's why I'm talking about drilling down, if you trace it deeper, the laws of the land require for every development, every house, to get a building permit from the planning committee of the assembly before they put up any structure. And that building permit should be able to identify clearly that you must have a toilet in the house. But over time, the lowering of the discipline or the collapse of the discipline makes a landlord think of the money that they can earn from the part of the house that was supposed to be accommodating the toilets and the bathhouses, to convert that into a room where you will rent out to somebody, earn some income out of that, and leaving you and I, who are tenants in the house, to go to the gutter side to go and do what we've done that resulted in the fire service coming to flush it out. So that fall in discipline tells us that if you look at the liquid waste matter and begin to go down, it goes beyond what you and I see or what the media sees that they report on. And I would like to suggest that the media should go beyond that and attempt. I know it's going to be confrontational in a way, but if you get us with the sanitation brigade coming on stream, they can lead you to inspect some houses. Go into a house and ask them, who is the landlord? Mr. Ada is the landlord. How big is your house? I've got a house, the house, compound house would say 12 or 20 rooms. Yeah, where's your toilet? Where's your bathroom? That's when you begin to get into trouble. And then you can ask them, where's your building permit? What allows you to put this up? Before you go down to the housing codes matter and ask what the ministry is doing about that, whether it's the Works and Housing Ministry or the Sanitation Ministry, you begin to find that the headache should not really be solely that of the ministry, but it should be on each of us. The landlord has a role to play. You, the media houses, rather than focusing on the minister saying he's not cleaning the excreta that somebody is dropping out there, we should perhaps be focusing on Mr. Ada, who is the landlord, who has not provided a toilet in his house. Of course, if you go to the solid waste too, where we provide a dustbin, or the environmental service providers, the waste collectors, provide a dustbin for my house, and then I choose to take it to my room and put some water in there because I feel there's a shortage in water, or maybe we're going to have a funeral or a wedding and I need to put some ice blocks in there and put the drinks in there. That is actually a misapplication of that resource. So that's the complication of the problem we have before us. And we are happy that Mr. Lumon and his colleagues are prepared to support us. And we have worked out the program under our strategic plan to engage the NGOs, the civil society organizations, to also play their part in going out there and doing what we as a small ministry cannot do in every part of the country. And they're doing that willingly. I know they require some resources. We may not have enough. We will also entreat the corporate Ghana entities to come in and be part of it. We have a program again to engage them and to ask them to pledge their support. Not necessarily cash for the ministry, but in some cases we may need that. But in other cases, it may be for them to adopt certain communities where they can ensure certain things undertaken in those areas. So the provision of infrastructure, all these facilities are so important to encourage the Ghanaians to begin to do the right thing, which simply means that whereas the law exists, that we should do the right thing. we want to begin the process by providing some of these facilities as an incentive for you to know that, look, you must have a toilet in your house. And there's opportunity in this case under one of the World Bank supported projects we call GAMA, Greater Accra Metropolitan Area Project, which has been ongoing for a while. And as I speak, we've awarded contracts for 11,000 toilets, which are being deployed now. We've commenced, I think, so far, the report I got is that about 2,000 of them have commenced. I'm sure it's probably gone more than that. So with that, if you're serious that you don't want to be brought to book, you don't want AMA Chief Executive or Tema Chief Executive or La Dadekutupong or La Nkontanang Chief Executive to take you to court, you rush for these toilets and build them in your houses, then you will not run the risk of facing the law when the time comes. But it's your responsibility to start with. And I must add also, that is just to kick off the enforcement, to ensure that the government is stretching its hand out there for you to do what you need to do properly. So you're only encouraged to take advantage of this opportunity. But once the project is over, once we've exhausted our resources, will be serious enforcement. But of course, we're starting with the light enforcement alongside that.
But we know that the district assemblies or the local government structure is supposed to be at the heart of all this. The ministry may be at the center and doing the coordination. Based on what your observations are, civil society and NGOs, how weak or not are the enforcement regulatory regimes at the district assembly level, and how do we need to beef that up to bring it at par, so to speak?
Yes, let me say this, that the country, I think, is much more dirtier when we came out with the ministry, a whole ministry to handle that. Because I've been working with the, I've been to LECMA, I've been to LADMA. The issue has to do with that. Now we have a whole ministry to take care of this issue of filth. So the assemblyman is not doing anything because he feels that now the country has a whole ministry to do that. So if you are to strengthen their work, especially the assemblyman is working, the unit committee team are working, the MC or DC is working. The local government ministry on its own have policies. They have great ideas. But I think that they are only lying up in the I would say in the wardrobes and all that. Those policies are not being used. I have with me the local government, the environmental sanitation policy of that was revised in the year 2010, and they have fantastic ideas, but I think that they are not being used. We go for workshop, we seminars, whatever recommendations that come up, we don't make use of them.
How do we actualize them then? Using the various structures in the local government sector, or the structure, the way as it is, the district assemblies, the various unit committees, etc. Because the minister definitely will not be there when cleaning has to go on, so to speak. When human behavior as being practiced in homes has to be undertaken well.
Yes, much more will be done if we try to be hard on people. You see, we have to be hard. As
in the strict enforcement of
yes,
regulations.
Exactly. You see, everything boils down to that. Everything boils down to that. There are policies, there are laws, but they are not being enforced. That's the only thing.
Well, I could contribute to that. I think one of the first steps we could take on this, which we've already commenced on, is to have baseline data on each of the localities we're talking about, whether it's a whole district, metropolitan, municipal area, or we have a small community. We should know the state of filth in the area to begin with. And then we look at the stakeholders who are part of it, whether it's opinion leaders in the area, whether it's a chief, whether it's the unit committee, whether it's an assemblyman, and then of course the district assembly itself. That would mean that management agreements or contracts will have to be signed with the assembly. That's what the president said. He announced last year when we launched the National Sanitation Campaign that there will be some contracts signed with the assemblies on the sanitation bit, which would tell us that with the baseline, if let's say you had available some X metric tons of waste littering about all over the place, and you're being set to reduce it by X% over a certain period, then the chief executive would have to take it down to the various levels that are required. As to how effective or how weak the enforcement structures are, I'll say that the assemblies are also constrained in terms of resources, in terms of personnel. But of course, the few environmental officers they have are also within the assembly, in many cases, are not being recognized. They're just being seen as another officer to be called upon and sent to go run some errands. It's only when they need them that they call them over. But we are working on getting them to be part of the district management team and to be recognized just as the district director of education is recognized at that level, such as the district director of health management team is recognized, and the even the forestry department commission at that level, where they're all equal partners in the district management team. Once that is done, then he or she can present their plan, when the resources that are required will be allocated for them to go out there to undertake those exercises. Without that, they may not have the support that they need in terms of personnel to go out and enforce, and may be told that this is not so important for now. So the weakness depends on the willingness and desire of the chief executives and their senior officers to accommodate and utilize these officers. So we're working at really raising the bar, as it were, and getting the recognition that we need for the environmental officers and the engineers.
Well, data, etc., is important. And when we're talking about resources, have we been able to quantify, maybe in the medium term, short to medium term, what we need by way of some budgets, how we can improve the situation in the interim?
Oh yes, we've quantified that, we've valued it. If you take out something in the neighborhood of about 800 to 900 million cedis of debt that we inherited, and go down to what we need, it would range from what we need to be able to pay personnel to what we need to be able to provide gadgets and accessories to the assemblies to be able to do their work. And that we're talking upwards of about 700 million cedis or so. That is not counting the private sector investment that will come through perhaps PPPs. And I say that because the solution to sanitation today is not just you and I being very good and doing what we need to do at the local level, but the end result is the disposal. How effectively do we dispose of the waste? And that would all come from how we are able to sort the waste and how we're able to recycle or process it. And I'd like to bring to the attention of viewers that the thinking today globally in the value chain of waste is that the disposal comes in the form of what we call material recovery facilities. So it's not a landfill sites that we've been talking about, such as we have in Pantine or Alpum. We are negotiating, and we are close to signing agreements and acquisition of lands where many companies have offered to come and establish these material recovery sites. That simply means that in this integrated site, you'd have a sorting station, which would be more like a big warehouse where the waste will be offloaded to, and then will be sorted into things that need to be recycled, that will go to a recycling unit within the same facility. Then things that need to be maybe chopped up and added to fecal matter, that will be transformed into compost, and then we'll also be able to isolate those materials that will have to be incinerated, that will go into supporting the running of turbines that will generate electricity for us. The final result of the waste that we generate usually should not be more than 10%. It comes in the form of some little ash that could be combined with even bitumen and used for pavement of our streets.
How receptive are the waste management companies or the players in the private sector willing to collaborate with you, the non-governmental organizations, to improve their behavioral patterns, but also improve capacity?
us as NGOs to get the support of other entities to help you drive your vision is very, very difficult. Even with the ministry, I would say
it's also pretty difficult.
It's been very difficult.
Well, it's good that the minister here. I'm sure you can get some level of support after this.
Yes, I've tried to meet him, but it's been very difficult. Trying to call him, it's been very difficult. So we actually, as an NGO, last month we undertook a project.
What was that?
And the project was titled Sanitation Education at Lorry Stations. We decided to go to lorry station because it's one of the places where you could have people from different backgrounds. And so what we did was to educate drivers, passengers on the need for a clean environment. And every car that, after talking to these passengers, we have a sticker. We paste it. We have a small size, the one that goes into we have this goes into the vehicles, and then this at the back of the vehicles. Yeah. So this is just an image. Do not throw rubbish around. Put it in the dustbin. So this was inside the vehicles, and this was at the back. The larger one was at the back, so that everyone can be able to read it. So as an NGO, we are trying to change the attitude of people, but we can do little.
Yeah. So we need a lot more of you.
Yeah.
To get a supplement. But I would want to ask you, why is it that, for example, when we're talking HIV or maternal mortality, we have some funding available, but for waste, it becomes difficult for civil society to contribute with their bit?
Well, the basic difference is that with HIV, it's directly life-threatening. Everybody sees it. Okay. But people don't relate immediately to the health cost of sanitation. And the government understands that, and that's why the president announced 200 million cedis to kickstart this. We have been working on a sustainable financing approach to this. In some other jurisdictions, sometimes they just have a levy, okay, across board, that such as on the talk time tax sort of thing, where the levy and use that to undertake this.
So you're exploring all
this? No, we're exploring all of that. I don't want to jump. I'm just giving an example of what happens in other jurisdictions.
So that we can make an announcement that we have an increase.
No. That's why I'm saying don't go that far. There are other jurisdictions in Ghana where people pay when we go to collect, and so the service providers are supposed to collect the waste and be paid for that and convey the waste to the final disposal site. Then again, there are some who collect the money there and still expect the money to be paid again to them, in addition to monies that they are being paid for managing the landfill sites. So all these things make us understand that there's quite a bit of money in the system, but it's spread out in a manner that's not coming to the pot the way that should be handled in a sustainable manner. But
many of the times when we do the comment,
Roland, may I just touch on a bit of the NGOs and my good friend Mr. Lumor saying that he's not able to meet us. Yes, there are many of them who are coming through my office. I've seen Green Ghana, so many different organizations. Maybe he's come at the wrong time. Maybe he came, we were too busy, and he couldn't wait, and so on. But we are happy, and we've set up a unit that's coordinating all these NGOs. We need them badly. We need them to go out there and help propagate the message for us. And so I expect Mr. Lumor to be back in my office for us to engage with this.
And this is a good interactive.
Let me also add that even within the services, I'm talking about the military, the police, the fire services, and all of those immigration, they've offered and they're
with the open urination, if we could reduce the fee at the public places where we
sometimes it's 20 pesos,
yes,
50 pesos.
Now it's like, I think 30 pesos. So for
still reduce it further.
someone, yes, for someone to pay that, the person will look for a nearby place and do that. So the fee must be reduced for the urination, and then for the defecation. For public toilet, now it's 1 cedi.
Okay.
Let's reduce it.
Well, we have to wrap up our discussion, but we know that overall, we've started an initiative. It's not the first time we're starting a national program to make sure that collectively we all come on board to clean our cities, etc. But the waste companies have a great role to play. What's the collaboration, and how do we want to take them there? It could be Jakura, it could be Zoomlion, it could be Asedu Waste, it could even be April, June, etc. How do we want to take them to the next level?
Oh, we're engaging them in refining the way that they're operating with the assemblies. We're coming up with a set of benchmarks and operational standards and procedures. We're looking at the reviewing process to re-engage them through some rezoning of the areas to make sure they're more effective. But above all, we're looking at, if you will, a middle tier type supervisory activity. Essentially, that means that a team will be there that will monitor their activities, that will ensure that they're doing what they're being paid to do, and so on. An example would be that if you take Zoomlion, which is very visible, every morning you could see 5, 10 of them all congregated in one area. By early afternoon, some of them will be sleeping under the trees. They're not actually sweeping. And so the monitoring team would come in. Not only would they be involved in collecting the money that we have to collect, leaving the cleaning and the collection of the waste to Zoomlion and Jakura and the others, but they'll also be able to tell on a day-to-day basis, in one stretch, such as from Accra to 37, this happened on this day, and so you're not really meeting the standards. And if you consistently continue with that, then your contract will have to be reviewed.
And we're not talking about Accra alone, we're talking countrywide.
Nationwide.
All right. Thank you very much. We've had great conversation this morning. We've had in the studio Joseph Kofi Ada is a Minister for Sanitation. He's also a Member of Parliament for Navrongo. And well, we've had some great discussions. He's been in the studio alongside Kwejo Lumo, who is Executive Director for Walcott Green. He's an NGO that focuses on sanitation in specific areas. They have begun an initiative in educating people on how they can adequately dispose of waste, especially at lorry stations and some of those congregated areas. We wish them all the best. We will always be complimenting the ministry and also such NGOs and the waste companies to make sure that we change the attitudes of all of us to get to the next level. But through it all, you can get interactive on Facebook. We stream the live, so that's a good thing about it. Please make sure that JoyNews on TV is a page for you, and My Joy Online TV is your channel on YouTube where you can watch us anywhere you are in Ghana. Once you have cheap data, that is always available. Well, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have greater conversation to talk about, and we'll have a lot more to also look at. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.